Okay, we're back for part 2 of the lesson. Now in this segment what we're going to be talking about primarily is editing in the fine editing screen and actually putting stories together and how that happens. We're also going to do a little bit more of the audio editing. People who are new to video editing don't realize that often the most difficult part and important part is actually the audio editing, because that's where your story is told. That's where your voice comes in. So if you don't do that right, your piece isn't going to work. Like I said, most of the time when I'm doing a TV story, I start with telling the story, right? So I'm going to write my story first, I'm going to record my voice, and then I'm going to put that in and then cover it with B-roll. So we're going to do that exercise first off, and then we're going to learn the tools much more in depth that we use for that. So in this case, I didn't prepare anything in advance for this particular story, so I'm just going to record my voice into the track. And normally I would do that in a case where I'm just in a real rush. I have to get something on air very fast. I record my voice into the track, drop a clip, record my voice as maybe outro, we call it in CBC, and then save it and send it. But to record my own voice, again, I'm going to hit the plus sign that you see on the fine editing screen. I'm going to hold it down, and then I got the option to import a clip or record a clip. In this case, I'm just going to record a clip. So I drag my finger over, add new recording, and I'll say something like, the software company Symphony has introduced a new system to make it a lot easier to handle advertising at radio stations, not just to place the advertising, but to complete the sale of the advertising. I hit stop. There we go. So I'm going to call that Symphony. And again, under my naming scheme, I call it VC, right? So, as you can see, that's imported in. So, I'm going to work with some audio now, and I'm going to do it very slowly so that we all understand exactly what we need to do with the audio. So the first thing is I'll just play it to see how it is. The software company Symphony has introduced a new system to make it a lot easier to handle advertising at radio stations, not just to place the advertising, but to complete the sale of the advertising. Okay, so there's a little bit to get rid of on the end, right? And another thing is it's probably a little too quiet. You probably want to be about 80% of the track. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the parts that I don't need. There's 2 ways to do this. You'll see there's a tab, a silver tab at the top left and the bottom right. Now we call these trim tabs. So rather than having to go in and edit, a lot of your editing is going to happen at the beginning of a clip and the end of a clip. You know, probably the majority, 70 to 80%. So to trim what we call the top or the beginning, I'm going to grab the silver tab and I'm going to drag it to the right. So I've now gotten rid of the stuff the silence at the beginning. And of course I had a little bit of voice there I didn't want, so I'm going to grab the tab on the right and I'm going to drag that over. So I've now gotten rid of the bad part of the top and tail. So now I just need to drag my clip over. Now, one thing I want you to notice, again, I said be very deliberate. When I touch that, I don't just move it like that because that would scroll, right? So be deliberate. If you want to grab something, it takes a second to grab it. Push it down, you'll see that it does a little blue poof. That poof means that you now have control of it. So if you see that, it means you can now move that clip. So I moved it back to the beginning. So now it'll go from exactly what I want. And I've got a 12-second clip. So I may want to do a couple of other things. One, I may want to boost the volume a little bit. So again, in this case, I just want to change this one clip. So I'm going to highlight and I double tap. Any clip I want to work on, double tap. And I'll say that 100 times today. Then I go to my mixer, which is the one, you'll see a button that looks like a little mixer board. You press that button and it brings up 2 toggles. One on the left, which will affect everything in the track. In this case, I only want to affect the clip, so the one on the right. Now what I do is I just bring it up and you'll see that I get a visual representation. When it gets about there, I'm at about 80% roughly, and that's about right for voice. If you're doing background sound underneath, of course, you want it much lower, right? Probably down to like 10%. So that's how I've changed the volume. Now I might do a couple of other things that are a little more tricky. So again, I'm going to touch the bottom of the timeline. You'll see the cursor jump to my finger, and I'm just going to do a quick fade over about 1.5 seconds. So I highlight the 1.5 seconds, but now I need to be able to be a little more precise. So I'm going to go to zoom, and like I said before, the two tools you use, zoom to selection and zoom to fit. So I'll zoom to the selection, and now I can see that blown up on the screen. The second tool I use in sound is I'm using my fade tool or volume curve. You'll see a tool, it's right next to the mixer. It looks like a V with little dots. That's the volume curve tool. So press that. Again, you have two toggles, one on the left, one on the right. First one is going to affect your in cursor, the second one is going to affect your out cursor. So I'm going to bring the second one, or sorry, the left one down to the bottom. I'm going to pull the right one up to the top. So that is taking me from, basically it's going fade from black all the way up to maximum volume, right? So now this is what's called a linear fade. It just goes straight up. It gets louder in a linear way, right? But I actually want it to get louder faster. So I can hold that button down, and you'll see there's a number of options. There's linear, concave up, concave down. The concave down will make it come up a lot faster. So I'm going to put that kind of curve on it. So basically I've now handled my audio on the beginning. Normally I'm going to probably want to fade my voice under, maybe the guy that's going to be talking right after me. In other words, the clip. So again, double tap, highlight everything, touch the top, this time to bring the in marker, and I just do the same thing. This time I just reverse the toggles, and now I've got that kind of clip, right? Okay, so again, I'll hold it down and concave down, and I finish my fade. That's all I need to do. So the other thing is, again, zoom to fit, the tools I use all the time. So now I've finished that part. I would drop my clip is actually going to go in here, and that means that I'm going to have 12 seconds roughly of B-roll to cover my voice, right? So to cover B-roll, if everybody remembers, the top track is B-roll, right? So whenever you're covering your own voice, you always go to the top track every single time. So I go up here, and I'm going to go, there's a button that looks like an arrow going into a wall. So that's the back to start button. I'm going to press that button, and the cursor will go back to start. And that's when I'm going to go back and I'm going to start adding some clips. So I hit the plus button, or add button it's sometimes called, and I need a couple of pieces of B-roll to go with this story. So I'm going to pick something, Sim 2.1, Sim 2.2 are the two that I'm going to be using. So I'll pull this one up first, again moving the cursor to exactly where I want it. About, say, there. Drag it down. Again, from in this screen, still in the build screen, I'm going to hit the plus button, and I'll hit this one here. This first one, as you'll see, if you take a look at the small block that I created, you'll see that it's 6 seconds, right? So now I know all I need left is I need another 6 seconds to cover. So again, I'm going to bring this one out. Oops, sorry, I need the other one. This one here. Oh. Yeah, that one. Okay. So 6 seconds. I drop it in. And if I play that back, again, I'm going to go back to the start, and I play it back, you'll see I have B-roll that covers over everything. Symphony has introduced a new system to make it a lot easier to handle advertising at radio stations, not just to place the advertising, but to complete the sale of the advertising. So that's dropping in B-roll. Really, really simple. Now, after the B-roll, of course, at some point you want to bring in your clip. So
usually you're going to do that at the end of the time that you're talking. So again, if you'll see that button, I usually call it the go to start button, but you can go to other places with it. So that's the one that looks like like an arrow that crashes into a wall. If I hold that down, I'm going to go to end, or I can go to next. So that takes me to the end of the clip. So now I know roughly where I want to drop that one. I just click the BRoll track. The cursor, as you see, jumps up there. And now I can drop my clip. So again, I'm now going to go plus, and I'll find a quick clip here. Won't worry too much about getting it exact at this point. And there we go. So you can now see that I got my voice on the bottom, I have BRoll at the top, I now introduce my clip, I'm going to come out of the BRoll. When I play it, you'll see that it automatically is going to jump down to this fellow.
We are a sales, traffic, and billing system provider. Typically in this business, it's very fragmented.
So pretty simple to do. One thing I did want to show you is you don't necessarily have to have it just jump, what's called a jump, from one clip to the next. You can actually have your BRoll go over his voice as well. So again, the same thing that we did with audio, we can do with video. So if you take a look at this one on the top, this little piece of clip that I have on the top, you'll see there's those same silver tabs. So if I drag those to the right, I can extend it out, and now you're going to still see the BRoll, but you're going to hear his voice come up. And that's a technique that's often used in television, so that you can hear the guy's voice, you can hear in your mind there's a transition, but you won't see the guy until you actually make this shift. And now it looks more like this.
The sale of the advertising.
We are a sales, traffic, and billing system.
So that often can be much more effective.
Typically in this business,
So I showed you some advanced tools to work with audio, like simple fades. I'm going to be showing you some voice ducking later as well. But right now I wanted to show you how you can do some of the same things with video. So in other words, fades and effects and that kind of thing. So the first one I'm going to show you is a fade out. So we're going to work BRoll that I created and then go to our subject. So again, double tap, highlight the whole clip. Whenever you're going to work on a clip, highlight the whole clip. And then there's a new gesture I'm going to show you. You take two fingers, like a peace sign, and then you're going to touch down. This is called, instead of a double tap, this is called a two-finger tap. I'm going to press and hold right there. You can see where the blue marks where my fingers are. When I lift up, you'll see a new set of tools. So these are called contextual menus. So depending on what you're doing, different tools will come up. If you've highlighted a clip, you will get this set of tools. You'll get cut, copy, paste, delete, and then you'll get clip FX. So if I wanted to delete something, a simple way to do it is just press and hold with two fingers and then hit delete. So what I want to do now though is I want to do a clip FX, and I can do a variety of effects in here. So that's at the right hand side of this toolbar. I'm going to click that. And the first thing I'm going to do with this one is we call it a transition out. Some people call it a fade out. And I'm going to do a linear fade. I've got some fancier fades here, actually, that aren't on your app right now. But I'm going to do a linear fade. And I'm going to do a duration of, say, 2 seconds or 1.5 seconds, say. So that's all I have to do. I touch the screen to get rid of it, and then you will see when I play that I'll fade now into the clip.
we are a sales, traffic, and billing system provider.
So it's just a nice little effect to introduce. I wouldn't overuse it. Usually when you use that, you're transitioning from one scene to another scene, but don't use it between every clip. Use it when you're going, say, you're shooting a story in, say, Afghanistan at a military base, and then you go out into the field. You can do a fade to transition from one scene to the other scene. Very effective. Another thing you might want to do is titling. So now I'm going to title this person. So again, what would I do? I'm going to double tap, highlight the clip, 2-finger tap, get the peace sign, hold it down, and I'm going to see my tools come up. I'm going to hit the clip FX. And now I go to title. So there's a variety of different things you can do. You can put the title at the top, the middle, the bottom, or full screen. Full screen is usually used when you go on black and you introduce a subject. Yes?
To the different,
Let me go back. So right from the beginning, 2 fingers, hold it down, press clip FX. Once you have that menu, the first one on the menu is title. And then the following 2 are transition out, transition in, and transition out. So I'm now going to go to style, and I'm going, in this case, I'm going to do, usually a name is a bottom overlay, or a bottom third, we often call it. So all I have to do is put my thing here. Yours will look slightly different because you have a smaller screen, but I can type in his name, Dan Sampson. Oops. Title should be capitals. There we are. And basically, done. So, I hit done, and when I play this now, you'll see that I have a nice transition into my clip. It fades out, and it brings up his name.
The sale of the advertising.
We are a sales, traffic, and billing system provider.
I can also extend the amount of time. So if I wanted a 4-second, on for 4 seconds, then I can choose that. So that's how you do titling. So those are the main techniques for video effects. The next thing, of course, is if we were doing a real story, you would just simply repeat the process. In this case, I'm going to drop another audio clip. So I would hit the plus button. I'll just bring in a piece of audio very quickly here. And there you go. So now I'd be ready to put my next series of BRoll pieces on there. You can do this very quickly, and one of the reasons we built the build screen the way we did is because it's much slower in other programs to actually put in a lot of BRoll. So this part I'm going to do quickly. So I'm going to just drop in lots of very fast BRoll from different sources. And I'm also going to change the order so that these guys walking go first. There you go. So that's a very quick way to cover your audio. And you basically repeat this process. Usually at the end you would have your stand-up, so you would see yourself come in at the end. That basically is how you create the story in the Fine Editor. What I wanted to get into, though, was you can do a lot more with audio. So building the story, essentially repeat the process. You guys have already been told, I think, how to build a video story. What you might want to do, though, is you might want to put in either background sound or a special effect, right? So the difference between the two is a special effect is usually a short, sharp sound that changes the scene. So if I'm in a rail yard, if I'm going from, say, an office building, and the next scene I'm in a rail yard, I'm going to get the noise of a train, and usually it's going to be something like a train whistle. So I'll just take maybe 2 seconds of train whistle and put it in exactly when I switch scenes from the office to the train yard. Pretty simple. But in the background, I might have, a whole bunch of sound. The first thing I do as a reporter, and this is TV or radio, when I go to a scene, is I record audio. I don't necessarily record video first. I record audio first. So what I do is I go in, I hit the recorder, and I take background sound. So even if I was in this room, which you'd think there's no sound, there actually is. There's a buzz right above my head. So if I interviewed you here and I didn't take background sound, when I do my thing in post later, you will instantly hear the end of the clip. The buzzing will stop. You'll hear my voice. There'll be no buzz under my voice. You'll know I'm not in the same room as you anymore. So when you're doing TV, you want to make it seem like you're in the scene, right? So the first thing you do, record audio, take about, if your story is going to be 2 minutes, take 3 minutes of audio. Just turn it on, put it somewhere quiet, tell people to be quiet if you can, and take some background noise. So in that rail yard, I would take 3 minutes of just general rail yard, and I would do this. I don't have rail yard, but I'll use some music instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some background sound, and I'm going to put it on sort of for the duration. And in this case, I'll just maybe take some quiet music and I'll put it underneath. So again, I'm going to go into the bottom track. I'm going to hit that plus button, and then I'm going to bring in, a little bit of music here. So in this case, I've got to cover somewhere in the realm, hang on here, somewhere in the realm of about 36 seconds, roughly. So hit my plus button, pick my file, highlight 36 seconds, drop it down. Whoops, that's too long. There we go. So it's obviously going to be too loud. So there's two things I can do. The first one is just drop it. So again, I would highlight the clip. I'm going to pick my mixer, that button that looks like a little mixer board, and I'm going to drop the sound down drastically underneath. I would probably also want to fade it so it doesn't come in abruptly. So again, I'm going to highlight the portion that I want to do a fade on. I'll press the volume curve tool that looks like a V, and then I will use the toggle to just quickly do a fade. So pretty simple. Now there's a second thing I can do. I may want to have louder noise for a while, but then are people here familiar with voice ducking? Okay, a couple of you are, a couple of you aren't. So voice ducking is when you'll hear on the radio, for example, in an advertisement, you'll hear you'll hear loud music, and then all of a sudden the music will fade and you'll hear someone's voice go over top, and then the music will come up again. That's called voice ducking. You're ducking under someone's voice. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duck under my friend Dan Sampson's voice. I'm going to make him louder, by the way. So he'll be louder. And what I want to do is make this very, very quiet. You'll hear it a little bit, but not very much. It's very much like doing a fade, but you're doing it at the beginning and the end of this conversation. So again, I'm going to put my cursor right at the beginning of where he talks, as you'll see, right at the beginning of this clip. I'm going to use my volume curve tool again. I'm going to create a fade down like this. And as you can see, I'm going to bring it down drastically so it's like maybe 5% of what it would normally be. I'm going to let that go along, and then here I'm going to bring it back up. And I just reverse the process. So if this is done correctly, you have sort of a river valley that drops down under the voice, and there's a mountain on either side. So if you can take a look at that, that's basically a voice duck. And voice ducks are usually used at the beginning and the end of a clip. Now, let's see here. I wanted to show you one more thing about contextual tools before we take another break. I showed you when something is highlighted, you get a certain set of tools. Cut, copy, paste, delete, and if you're doing video, you'll get Clip FX. But if you're actually collapsing it to one cursor, you get a different set of tools. So the first thing to know is, how do I get one cursor? Basically what you do is if you're highlighting the whole clip again, double tap in the middle. If you want one cursor, you'll take your finger and you will do a double tap at this time on the timeline. It can be the top or the bottom, doesn't matter. But if I have two cursors and I want to have one cursor right here, I just double tap on the timeline and the two cursors will become one cursor. And this is so that I can split the clip. So again, to bring up my contextual menu, I do the peace sign, I hold my fingers down, and now I only get two tools. I can split and I can paste, right? I obviously can't copy because I haven't highlighted anything. So the reason I might want to split something is I may want to independently move those. So I'll hit split, and you'll see that I can now change that. Use that if you want to, for example, boost volume for part of a clip, but not for the rest. So now I have two clips that I can independently, move around or anything else. So basically, that's where you bring up the second contextual menu, and it's very handy because you may have very uneven audio, and you just have to split clips, and then you can deal with that separate piece of audio. So I think that's about all we'll get through in this segment, and when we come back, we're going to get into some of the sort of more advanced tools, but also in posting a news story.